expertise at all. We're just like finding out the facts of the internet and then seeing what people think. And once people get to that point, they're like, okay, well, even if they believe something different to us, which is fine if they do, we don't mind that. What we never do is we don't try to punch down on conspiracy theories. We don't try, and maybe sometimes we accidentally do, we don't try to kind of make anyone feel stupid, because like people believe things for all sorts of different reasons, and people believe things because they have had a different experience to you or me in life, and therefore they formed an opinion based on circumstances in their own life, and you have to understand that. I don't think it's like necessarily right to just go, well, you believe this, you're an idiot. Actually, the more interesting is, okay, why do you believe that? What is that based on? That's the far more interesting discussion than just like you throwing your facts and them throwing their facts, because you're never going to win, and that's not going to produce any kind of interesting conversation. It's far more interesting to go, okay, so why do you believe what you believe? And then, you and I can talk about why I don't believe it. And that I think is a much more interesting conversation. And so the audience like to get involved in that. So they will sort of say why, they believe something or don't believe something. And we like that. We enjoy that. It's nice to see. We want people to be engaged with it. And I mean, from a technical perspective, it's a challenge because you can't mic up everyone in the audience, but they've always been fun. Every live show we've done has been fun. So that's a nice aspect of it. So hopefully we'll try and do a few more of those this year.
If you did it like a Piers Morgan style, I think it would be a lot more dangerous, and you probably need security guards.
Yeah, probably. Unfortunately, neither David or I are cunty enough to do that. So it would be a real twist if we did start doing that.
It'd be lively, and you would be everywhere. Oh my! Well, I mean, but I mean, bloody hell, it'd be a completely different show, wouldn't it?
Totally different show. And I'll be honest, like it's not the vibe we're going for. And it's like, he's a contrarian. He's intentionally a contrarian, right? And he's I don't know whether he believes everything he says, but he's prodding people and he's poking in order to get a reaction. That's not what we do. We want to know what someone thinks, and we want to know their opinion. But equally, we don't. But if someone has a different opinion to us, we don't sort of laugh at them or go in on them. We want to know why they got that opinion. So even David, like, yes, David and I joke. He jokes about me about being a sheep, and I joke with him about being a fucking moron. But but at the same time, we respect each other's opinion. I listen to what he has to say. I listen to why he believes what he believes, and it's similar with the guest and anyone else. Like, we have an audience member come in who has a specific belief on a certain topic because they've seen something or experienced something. You have to listen to that, and you have to understand where they're coming from with that, rather than just sort of like single them out. And also, it's not really a great thing for the room to sort of single one person out and have them as to paint them as an idiot in front of the rest of the crowd. That's not really what we want to do. So yeah, I think it'd be a real twist if we went down the Piers Morgan style route. And also, I can guarantee you we have a lot less guests wanted to come on if we started to go down that route as well.
Definitely. It's I've seen the Yuka Katani episode, and I mean the most interesting thing for me about doing the podcast is always the guest and finding out their story, and then hear what they say. I'm guessing it must be the same for you and Dave, because you got some amazing people in there, and I've seen them myself. But one of the things that I found interesting about running a podcast, and we said this before, once the podcast starts growing, it's easy to guess. I did find that at the start, I would have to send maybe 50 emails or messages before I got one exception. And it's gone up through the years. Now, I'll probably be around 50 and I'll get 3 or 4.
Yeah, I think when people see, I think people have to, you've got to understand, for a lot of people, most people don't go on podcasts all the time. Right? Don't get me wrong, there are some that do. There's lots of comics that do loads of podcasts, but there's some that don't. So they kind of need to see what they're coming into and what it's about. And that's one of the reasons why we try to make it an atmosphere or an environment that people feel comfortable in, that they can sort of voice their opinions, they can joke with us, they're prepared to be a bit critical, they can react however they want to, and we don't judge them for the way that they react to that. And I think, but you can only do that once you've built an established, once you've established what the podcast is going to be. And then when people see that, they can go, okay, well, that seems like a nice environment to go into. So I think, it gets easier to book people, but also like you know this, you want, just because somebody is a comedian doesn't mean they're right for the podcast, right? And that doesn't mean that we don't think that there's lots of people that are brilliant people, but it's got to be somebody who we think is going to work in that dynamic, and we think will have an interesting opinion on it. And we don't care what someone's opinion is. Like, we don't care whether they believe or don't believe. We don't even mind what they pick, whatever conspiracy they pick, particularly. What we think about is like, what will the dynamic work for the podcast? And I think we've been pretty good with that. We've sort of generally had, like you said, with Eureka, I mean, I knew Eureka a little bit, and thought she's going to be a great guest, and she was a great guest, and that's the case with all the guests we've had on. And some we know well, some we don't know well, but it doesn't really matter. Like, we sort of treat them with the same level of respect, and they seem to enjoy coming on, and that's kind of what you want from a podcast. Because if people, if people are enjoying themselves on the podcast, listeners will stay to the end of that episode, right? If you hear someone who's like kind of not really checked into that fully, then people aren't going to listen. You want guests that are engaging, who are excited about the topic that you're talking about, whatever the podcast it is, whatever it's about.